March 2021, the Cabinet Secretary of Interior of Kenya, Dr. Fred Matiang'i, announced the repatriation and also gave the ultimatum, the 2 weeks ultimatum to refugees in Kenya. He also announced the closure of Dadaab and Kakuma, which holds 430,000 refugees in Kenya. On today's discussion, we're going to discuss about the crisis of refugees in Kenya. And my guest is Ajak Ajok, a refugee and a lawyer. Welcome, Ajak.
Thank you, Mamadi.
Yes.
I'm happy to be here and to join you in this discussion. It is relevant and it's time.
Okay. Now, what's your opinion when it comes to the Cabinet Secretary announcing the ultimatum, the closure of the camps of Dadaab?
Okay, the first thing for everyone who had the 2 weeks ultimatum, if those who had gone to school and they know the refugee framework and the regime, they thought it was some kind of a joke.
Yeah.
Because taking refugees back to their countries and considering the obligations of Kenya kind of could not be achieved within those 2 weeks. And not even 2 years, leave alone 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So people thought it was some kind of a joke, or maybe it was a way of starting a dialogue. So that is what most people think, but it was not taken as a serious threat at the time.
Yeah, but do you think it's a serious threat as of now? Because now we have a roadmap, because they have set a date. The UNHCR representative, they had a meeting with the president and also the cabinet secretary. There's a road up to 22 June next year, 2022. For the repatriation.
Yeah, and following the 2 weeks ultimatum, UNHCR engaged with the government of Kenya.
Yes.
And they came up with various programs. Although at the moment, some of us, the scholars, especially refugee scholars like myself, we still believe that the 2 years period that the UNHCR and the government of Kenya have proposed is still not sufficient for whatever the government of Kenya wants to do to be achieved. Because if you are talking of maybe returning back refugees to their own countries and maybe reintegrating them or taking them to third countries, that is a procedure and it needs collaboration between the host country, the UNHCR, and the government of Kenya. It also needs the UNHCR to actually have a dialogue with third countries who may be able to receive refugees. And during my experiences in Kakuma, the people who are actually resettled to third countries, the numbers are usually few. It can even be less than 1% in an entire year. And most of the countries that actually receive refugees through the resettlement program are the first world countries like the US, the UK, Netherlands, those the European countries mostly, and the Americas. So for the government of Kenya to give a 2-year ultimatum and the program that has been now put in place by the UNHCR, I think it is something that needs time. Secondly, one option is not available to the government of Kenya, especially repatriation. Yeah.
Yes.
The reason why I think it is not available to the government of Kenya and the UNHCR is that the law says you can't forcibly repatriate refugees back to the places where they ran away because of fear of persecution, because of civil wars, or because of famine and drought. And if you look at the refugees who currently reside in Kenya and who are mostly in the refugee camps, they come from countries that have been affected by war and famine. So, and this thing has not calmed down. Take South Sudan, for example. The government is still fighting, the rebels.
Yeah.
The same thing, okay, for Somalis a little bit, but still we still have Al-Shabaab, which has terrorized people in some parts of the country. So it is not something that is easier. And look at Ethiopia. The Tigray are fighting the government. So it is not something that is easy, that we can say we are going to return them to their countries because the government of Kenya will be failing in its obligation. Yeah.
So do you think is it unconstitutional? Because this is the third or the fourth attempt for the government to try and forcefully repatriate. It once tried it with Somalis. Some Somalis went. Yeah, I think it was in
16?
Yes, 2016. Now, how constitutional is it? You being a lawyer.
Okay, the thing is, Kenya has adopted one of the most liberal constitution in the Horn of Africa.
Yes.
And actually, most of the countries within the larger East African community look up to the constitution of Kenya to adopt such a model. Because number one, at Article 2.5 and 2.4 and 2.5, it says that the general principles of international law and treaties that have been signed by Kenya shall become part of the law of Kenya.
Yes.
That is the starting point. And looking at the 1951 convention relating to the status of refugees, Kenya ratified it long time ago. And its protocol. Kenya was also party to the Global Compact on Refugees, which was just recently in 2019. So, and they have all accepted all these responsibilities. They have adopted a constitution upon themselves, which they say is going to govern how the affairs of the country are supposed to be run. And so it is so unconstitutional for them now to come and say that we want to denounce these kind of obligations without actually starting it from the international level, because we have ratified a treaty. If you want to opt out, there are procedures that have been set down. So you can't just wake up one day and say, okay, I want refugees to go back to their country.
Days. Yes.
And okay, I'm not just talking from from maybe academic point of view. This one has actually been litigated in the Kenyan courts. You know, when Kaiseri issued that directive in 2016 to repatriate the Somali refugees back to their country, the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights went to court.
Yes.
Yeah. They filed a petition whereby they said that this is a straight violation of the Constitution. Article 2.4 and Article 2.5, Article 27, you know, on non-discrimination and violation of international treaties. And the High Court said, yes, the government of Kenya was violating the law. Yeah. So, and that situation has not changed. There is nothing that has changed. Kenya has not come up with better programs to repatriate refugees. You know, repatriation has to be voluntary. That is the thing. So the government of Kenya cannot say, you have to go back now. I think you are safe. Yeah. Actually, it's a matter of engagement.
Okay. Actually, the government of Kenya was citing the reason for security to begin with, especially when you see what happened in terms of the Al-Shabaab also. They were saying what happened, especially in Dusit, the Dusit attack. One of the attackers was seen ferried from the Dadaab camp. And that's why, and also there also has been a hunch, though the government has denied, that the issue with the ICJ, the International Court of Justice with Somali, it can be a reason why Kenya is taking this lethal measure towards the refugees. What do you think?
For me, although we are not supposed to argue based on rumors, because that is basically a rumor, we can't tell, but the timing of this crisis, okay, let me get back a little bit, because looking at Kenya, it has been a good host. It has been generous for the last 3 decades.
3 decades, true.
Like the Dadaab camp was created in 1991 and Kakuma in 1992. So if you just try to look back, you'll see that Kenya has been so generous, has been hosting refugees, and it has received goodwill for that reason. You see, the international investment that is happening in Kenya is owing to its security, the fact that it's receiving refugees, and there are so many activities of the UNHCR that are happening within Kenya. So you see, that one encourages people, because, okay, there is an African proverb which normally says that, so people go to where they are in a way, acquainted with. And acquaintance is happening maybe because you have, maybe a relative has gone somewhere, or you have seen that it's a path that is beaten. So if you know that there are people from South Sudan that have been here, South Sudanese investors will come here, the same thing to Ethiopia, the same thing to Somalia. So Kenya has become the center of the East African Community for Investment because it is hosting people from from these regions, yeah, and from these countries. And so that is one of the things that has encouraged investment. And so we basically can say Kenya has been a good host. That is number one. But if you try to think critically at the moment, why did Kenya start all these issues starting from 2016? Okay, insecurity is one of the reasons that you can actually put forth. And also, some people, especially because the actions of the government are not within the law. If you're talking about insecurity, there are measures of dealing with insecurity, yeah? That's why some people find respite in saying that this is political and it is not based on any cogent reasons. Yeah.
Yeah, so about Kenya, you mentioned about international law. Now, getting to international humanitarian law, I have two questions. Is Kenya losing its humanitarian face when it comes to what it stated about the refugees' repatriation? And also, is Kenya going against the principle of reform? Because you see the repatriation, they are not willing repatriation in terms of this.
Yes, Mamadi, I would say Kenya is, if it is serious in really implementing this ultimatum that it has given out, is going against the principle of refoulement, because like I said earlier, that these countries are still unstable. If you are returning someone to a place of persecution, that is basically against the principle of non-refoulement. And so there will be no basis upon which government is going to return these people to places where they fear persecution or because they steal war and such things. So that is one thing. I believe it is going against its international obligations. Yeah. Number two, if Kenya was serious about this, it should have come up with a proper plan. Yeah. For a period, engage South Sudan, engage Somalia. I know in 2016 they came up, in 2017 they came up with a tripartite agreement between Somalia, Kenya, and UNHCR, which you have to identify a place where you are returning people to. That is the first thing. And the people must come and sign up to return home. There must be people on the ground, UNHCR officers on the ground, who will receive these people being returned back home. Because when you came to Kenya, you didn't have anything and your home was destroyed. So for you to actually go back there, you have to be assisted in the process. Yeah. So if the government of Kenya is not following these procedures, then it is against the principle.
So how best can it balance between its international obligation and also because it has a duty in terms of security, and that's what they cited. So how well can it balance between this, the international obligation and also the national obligation?
Yes, in as much as Kenya has its national obligation to protect its citizens and territories, it also has the international obligation to protect the refugees. Because once you are a refugee, you lose the protection of your own country, but you receive the protection of Kenya and UNHCR. So it is a matter of Kenya and UNHCR sitting down together with the refugees and talking about security. How do they ensure the security of refugees and the security of Kenya? But choosing one obligation over the other is not a solution. Like Kenya is basically electing to throw away refugees to protect its own people, and there are measures of actually curbing these insecurity threats. Yeah. So I believe balancing.
It's a balance of the two obligations.
Yes. Like now, if Kenya has internal turmoil, what will it do? Will it choose one tribe over the other? Refugee communities like any other tribe now in Kenya. That is one thing it has to do. So let's say there are maybe tribes that are along at the borders of Kenya. Let's say like Busia. So now Kenya cannot decide one day and say, because of the national security threats, there are terrorists who are coming in through Busia. Now we want these people from Busia not to be part of Kenya again and such things. Okay. They are kind of outrageous examples, but you see, you have to look at it that way sometimes.
Okay. Yeah. Now that Kenya considered it got the United Nations Security Council and permanent seat, can this help when it comes to negotiating about refugees?
Actually, I believe this is from my community, they say when someone is a joker, sometimes you give them the responsibility so that they have to make decisions.
Yes.
And I think the position of being at the National Security, UN Security Council
Yeah.
is very good, because it will make Kenya think critically and propose solutions. The reason why Kenya is having a refugee crisis is because the neighboring countries are unstable. So how Kenya, which has been peaceful for a period of quite some time now, how does it ensure that the neighboring countries also achieve peace? That is one thing that they have to do, because it is about providing security within the region. So Kenya has to be the big fish and propose solutions for these countries that are at war with itself. Kenya should be the biggest mediator and should see possible solutions, yeah? Because what is happening with Kenya, the reason why there is still continued instability in some of these countries is that Kenya and other peaceful East African countries have not tried to mediate very much. And they have, one way or another, tried to contribute to the instability of the neighboring countries, maybe by supporting the wrong regime. And it's one of the things, you can't protect your international diplomacy relations by supporting the wrong people to be in the office. You will have a crisis like receiving refugees. So now, as someone who is in that kind of stature, and some countries will be looking after it, it has actually seen the the influx of refugees. It has to come up with solutions so that the region remains peaceful. Yes. If it is integration that is going to propose, then be it. Take, for example, in Uganda, the reason why Uganda is a little bit peaceful at the moment and there are no such crises is because Uganda has adopted to have settlement camps instead of refugee camps. Settlement camps are so different from refugee camps in the sense that if you are in a settlement camp, you are given your own land, you are given a place to farm. Yeah? So you become self-dependent instead of depending on the ration that is distributed by UNHCR. And so that gives you a sense of security, and you will also protect what you have. But if you are vulnerable, you can even host criminals to survive. Those are some of the things that Kenya has to look at sometime.
So you've talked about integration. How best can the socio-economic integration of refugees be handled in Kenya?
Okay, sometimes it's good to borrow from countries that have done it successfully. But you know, borrowing sometimes has its consequences, because the countries that have done integration successfully are the first world countries, yeah? And Kenya does not have the kind of economic model that can actually accommodate refugees, yeah? And that is one of the challenges that Kenyan government is facing, and even the refugees. So it's a matter of sitting down, having a dialogue with UNHCR and see if it can share a burden. Because one of the things that the Global Compact on Refugees was trying to solve is sharing of the burden for refugees, yeah? And this is where now Kenya has to come in. The model of integration, okay, what does Kenya do? Maybe the West wants cheap labor, hard labor. So these people, they can go there. Also, there are refugees who are in Kenya, but they have economic independence. But they have been closed up in the camp. They cannot do anything. They cannot contribute to the Kenyan economy. So Kenya has to see where it can benefit and where it cannot benefit, yeah? So if you dialogue with these people, I think there is a way in which you can balance this thing. Like, for instance, there are refugees who run and they have their money, they have bank account and everything. They can invest in Kenya and they can live anywhere in Kenya. Why do you need them to stay in the refugee camp?
So you advocate more for dialogue?
Yes.
Okay.
For there to be successful integration, then the government of Kenya and UNHCR should identify which people are capable of being self-dependent. Can they stay in any part of the country? The reason why people are contained in some part of the camp is to ease the facilitation of services by the UNHCR, because UNHCR is not on ground everywhere in Kenya. It has to be in some specific locations, yeah? So, but there are people who do not need the assistance of UNHCR, but they have been confined in the camps. Looking at the camps right now, they are booming. They are booming because some people are doing businesses there, the host community is interacting, and a lot of things are happening. So Kenya needs to open up and let these people be free to contribute to the Kenyan economy.
Okay. Now, as we summarize, what's the way forward for the refugees? Because it seems like it's a matter of when and not if anymore, because the date has been set to be next year in June. Now, what's the way forward for the refugees? If at all, they'll be repatriated. And also, will Kenya live to its consequences to this, as we summarize?
Okay, reading critically at the joint statement with the government of Kenya and the UNHCR, a few things are very clear. It is the camps that the government of Kenya wants to close. Okay, I've read critical. I don't know if I'm misreading it, but that is what I have read.
Yeah, because
they only want to close the camps, but they do not really want to chase away refugees in Kenya.
Because they say the camps, they are not a sustainable
solution. And you know, being in the camp for such like 3 decades is not a good thing, because I've seen people who have lived in the camp, they have had children in the camp, the children have gone to schools in the camp, and the cycle of poverty is just building up and it's not changing. So camps are not places to stay forever, I believe. And that is why the government of Kenya has to come up with formidable programs where now they have to lead to the closure of the camps. Yes, like reintegration is the only way that they can do away with camps. But there is no way Kenya can really be free of refugees when the Horn of Africa is still in conflict. Yes.
Ajak Ajok, Ajak, thanks so much for coming to the Discourse KE.
Thank you, Mamadi, and I believe it is a matter of dialogue, making people aware, giving refugees a seat at the table, also so that they can contribute and put in what they think should be done by the government of Kenya. And it is time, and I really appreciate what you are doing, because the more you create awareness, it goes to the host community, goes to the government of Kenya, UNHCR, and makes people really understand the context of all these issues. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to be here.
Till next time.